We are live.
We are live.
Hello? Hello, hello, hello.
Oh, and look, there's an ad on my screen now.
Yep. Well, hopefully we'll be getting some people in here and all that good stuff.
Oh, you can't even see it. Yeah, it's all right.
No,
We're
it's
streaming
kind of cut
behind me.
off unless I went,
Yeah, no,
yeah,
it's
unless I
perfectly
went
fine.
to the back side of it.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, so it's actually been several weeks. It's been several episodes that I have not been
Yeah.
on. At least a couple in a row. I know I was on for one, maybe missed two, and I have been flying below the radar for a few weeks, but
Yep.
I've been I've been
Well,
slam
we're going to do
busy.
another one next week
Okay,
then because
next
Dave's up
Monday,
for that.
same time, 4:30, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
that actually
So we'll
works much
double
better
up and
for me now
then,
that the times changed back.
yeah. And I think he was saying it might be good to do one on like testing, kind of thing. If you
Oh,
saw that email he sent,
I did not.
experimenting. He said
Oh,
experimenting, but
okay. I was
basically experimenting and testing with different foods to find what
yes.
works, and that's right up my alley because that's a huge thing for me.
Actually,
Center myself on this.
I have I have cut cream out of my coffee. Heavy whipping cream. I've not used it for
Oh,
probably
that's
about
good.
2 months. Now I'm still eating heavy whipping cream, some right in keto ice cream or homemade whipping cream, or homemade whipped cream. But I have cut it out of my coffee for I would say every bit of 2 months now. So I've just been drinking my coffee black. Actually, so I have done some experimenting also. Yeah, and we should talk about that some. Everything that
Yeah.
you do has some challenges, and one of them is even the experimenting. You have to
Oh,
actually
yeah.
do it for, if you're not going to do it for probably 30 to 60 days, you're really not going to know whether or
No,
not,
I agree with that.
I mean, unless it's a severe kind of thing, you might know right away. My wife eats tomatoes pretty quickly. It hits her, the joint pain from that. But, for me, to know for sure how dairy would affect me, I'd have to really probably do for sure no cream at all. And then, Parmesan cheese or some hard cheddar cheese, but
Yeah.
no liquid dairy at all for at least 30 to maybe 45 days. Um, and
Yeah.
mine, I really think does just cause a little bit of the last little bit of nasal drainage and kind of stuff I have, I think is caused by that. But I'd have to cut out everything to find out for sure probably what it is, and then add those
Yeah.
things back in to really know. And that's you,
For me,
you got
I
to
get
be
a
disciplined
stuffy
to do
nose.
that.
My nose just gets a little more
Yeah.
clogged up feeling, and then I feel it in my joints. And I was eating the cream, and I actually quit here 4 days ago completely, 100%. But I'm still going to have that Parmesan
Yeah.
cheese.
Yeah. Yeah.
All I'd ask is anybody watching, if you can, hit the like button. Appreciate the hitting the little like button
Yeah. We should.
on us.
I should absolutely do probably 30 days of beef, butter, bacon, and eggs, and
And
just
feel,
cut out everything that I eat that is not kind of animal based, because I still have some blueberries. I still will eat some peanuts sometimes. I, None of those things bother me a lot, but I think they probably do bother my sinuses a little bit. So,
yeah.
um,
Well, I know I'm on, well, except for bone broth and a little bit of cheese that I had with the bone broth. But second day of fasting, I'm going to start trying 2 days fasting, 5 days eating.
oh, okay.
I'm going to try that for a while. So this is yesterday. Like I said, I had a thing of bone broth and then a little bit of that Parmesan cheese that always helps me.
So
So
you're gonna do
today won't be eating
mostly
too.
like not just water, but like bone broth or stuff, but not actually eating any solid food.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
The cheese I just do because even with the bone broth that I have, this got some fat in it and stuff. I just want to make sure with the no gallbladder thing,
Right. Right.
it stays in me. You could say. So
Now,
I'm gonna do that, and I'll probably cut it back. It's not much; it just helps a little bit. So I don't. I'm not like trying so hard to get. I know it'll make one little quick, difference maybe, but it's still 2 days of
Yeah,
no
not
main
significant. Yeah,
meals.
exactly.
Yeah.
I sent someone to your channel probably a couple weeks ago, by the way, because they had sent me a comment about that. They had no gallbladder and they were asking questions about that. And I said, listen,
Yeah.
go check out my friend Chad, the minimalist
Yeah.
carnivore. He has some videos about that, and he's been doing. They were saying, can you still do it? This is the issues they were having. And I said, look, Chad's rolling up on 6 years, right? He has no gallbladder. Go
Yeah.
check out his
5 years.
channel.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you're past 5 years now, though, right? Or you just coming up on
Past five
five?
years total with my keto, but then like strict carnivore 4 years.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
So yeah, because I went on the keto, all I did is eat meat and nuts,
Yeah.
except for that first 3 months I had other stuff, but I never ate veggies. So it was literally just what was it, meat,
Carnivore
nuts,
with
and
some
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 dairy.
nuts and dairy. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm actually, I guess, from when I first started, I am rolling up on 6 years. But it
Yeah.
was keto for 18 months,
Yeah.
muddling around for 12 months, off the wagon for 6 months, but I haven't met my target weight. I will be at my target weight for a year pretty soon, or pretty close to a year. I don't keep track of that. Some people
Well,
can actually say, "Hey, I started on X day." I know
I can't
roughly my
remember
weights, but
exactly.
like what day did I really start? I don't know. I have weights wrote down on the calendar. So I know when I started roughly. But it's like I was saying earlier, I haven't done cream in my coffee, heavy whipping cream for I don't know, maybe 8 weeks. It could be 5, it could be 12. I don't keep track of that well, I guess.
Yeah.
Unless I'm doing something specifically for 30 days or whatever, then I'm tracking that stuff and writing it down, but I'm just living
Well,
life, Chad. Just living life.
this this thing with the title or carnivore is wrong, since that was kind of your thing. What was this theory of?
Well, interestingly enough, so often in the world in general, in lots of areas, it seems like people almost have everything that they think is like 180 degrees out of phase with reality. So I'm sure you've seen these comments. I've seen a lot of them on my channel. That, for example, you can't be a carnivore. Being a carnivore is not sustainable because you're deficient in some area, right?
Yeah.
Or carnivore is just a fad diet. All of that kind of stuff. I mean, it comes up
That
all
you
the
need
time.
fiber.
You need fiber. There's certain things you can't get, and that is a constant kind of thing that I see on my channel. And my channel is again very small compared to a lot of channels. So I would imagine that thought is out there everywhere. In fact, it's not just on my channel.
Well,
I know people
it's on
personally
everybody's.
who who
Yeah.
who still think that, right? They're like, well, what do you don't eat any fiber? Like you can't get. Do you take supplements? Do you can't? Aren't you going to get scurvy and die? All of that kind of stuff. It's constant, and so also the notion that this started 5 minutes ago, and no one's done it. But there are people that have been doing really stricter carnivore than me for decades. But
Yeah.
even when you say that because it's so contrary to the norm, people people just refuse to believe that. The other thing is that I always find pretty ironic is the notion that doing a carnivore or an animal based diet. When I say carnivore, I mean animal based. You eat some dairy, fine, eggs, meat, animal based stuff, right?
Yeah.
That is what the human species has eaten for most of its existence until, the agricultural revolution. Because if you weren't eating that, you were dying, right? You ain't eating meat, you ain't eating nothing. Berries a few times a year. So a lot of times people think that what's natural is to be a vegan. I don't know. I don't even know how they can think that's natural, right?
Yeah.
But somebody is clearly
Well,
wrong,
they
right?
give out this like, oh, gladiators ate grains, and it's like, well, gladiators were slaves and disposable
Yeah,
fighters.
yeah, yeah,
And if you look at what was it about 3,000 years ago, our brains started reducing, and I think they say we've lost about 10% of our brain mass size over the last 3,000 years. And you look, that's kind of when the agriculture and grain really started coming into play. And they say if you look at some of these Egyptian mummies that they had heart disease, they
yeah,
had, you know, a lot of disease of the stomach, a lot of tooth decay,
yeah. Terrible teeth.
jaw problems, things like that, and they all ate a lot of grains. So
Yeah,
even if you go back and look at the cave paintings, they were never like, you know, we know what they were. They were pictures of hunting. People use the teeth analogy. Oh, you don't have teeth. And like Sandra said, my hippo's carnivore. Well, at least your hippo has the right teeth for carnivore, even though hippos eat plants. Like that's, look at those huge tusks. But yet all the cave paintings did show usually like spears, you know, or something like that,
well,
or the intelligence of running them off a cliff.
right.
So I
Well,
think too, these people, I'm so used to that we're wrong and this doesn't work that
yeah.
it's almost humorous because, you know, it
Well,
just
there's
is.
there's a number of studies now that have shown, and regardless of you want to debate the actual ages involved in these kind of numbers, that's a different story. But clearly, you go back in time, you look and you run some tests on the bones of people in the past. What you
Yeah.
find predominantly their diet was sometimes between 75 and 90% animal
Yep.
based, right? That's just the reality of it. And so and then the other issue is really with deficiencies, and that's the other thing that you hear, which again, people make those statements without ever thinking about the reality. If if you eat a vegan diet, you cannot possibly get vitamin B12. It's not possible
Yeah.
without taking supplements. And so the truth is, if you want to talk about just what's natural or what's sustainable, the only way you can be a vegan is to have a modern society that is able to supply you with vitamin supplements because you can't get B12 from
Yeah.
plants. There is none. And it's an essential micronutrient. You die without it. All right. And so,
Well,
I mean, what are you going to do? Well, except for
yeah.
like Dr. Ken Berry said, you can eat your poop and get some B12. But short of that,
Yeah.
you're
It's
not
not,
getting B12, right? That's
no.
just the way it is. We cannot make it in except for in the lower intestinal tract, which is
Well,
why you could eat your poop and get some, but you can't get it from plants. There is none, no plant. So,
yeah.
and yet, what can you not get from animal products? I mean, there's
I
not
had a
anything.
good back and forth in the comments on one of the people that tried carnivore and he said he had problems. And it was a short, quick, and I just, you know, said, well, what was this? And he came back with some stuff and he tried it for 6 months. It was actually good conversation. And, you know, he basically couldn't do it. He was having problems.
Right.
But for 6 months, he tried it and sounded like he was doing a good job and everything else. And it, adding this vegetable back, and I know at one point then he said, oh, you know, you're probably going to tell me do it longer and try harder. And I was like, actually, I won't, because if you tried it for 6 months and it didn't work, and it sounds like he gave it a solid shot and plants work, that's what's working for you. Do it.
Yeah.
I did say I would always test it again, you know, in a year later and see how you healed. Maybe you just couldn't do it. And that's why I think even sometimes this starting keto is an okay way for people to get into carnivore. I'm never dogmatic. I'm a hardcore biased carnivore guy. No ifs, ands, or buts about that. But it's like my bicycle analogy. When I used to ride with my friends, we'd go put out 40 to 100 miles a day in a race pace, hardcore competitive against each other. But some people just want to get on a bike and go 3 miles, 2 miles to the local park, sit and feed the ducks.
Right.
We're both riding bikes. It's, are you trying out for the Olympics or are you just going to go hit balls in the park with your kid? You know what I'm saying? There's all
Yeah.
these variables. And I do think there's a few on our side that do it, but not as many as the vegan side that literally hurt their health for an ideological value that they think is real, but it's even not, with saving the animals. And yet, I don't think there's any carnivore or keto people, and really the plant-based people who thinks meat's bad. Some of them do eat eggs, some of them will eat fish, some of those things. And I don't think they're as ideological about it, but that's our society in the last, whatever, let's say 50 years. I think we've gone more that way. And I think 50 years before, people did eat a wider range of things. And that's why when you go back to the 70s and see pictures, videos of parades, there weren't as
Oh,
many obese
yeah.
people.
Yeah. There
And
virtually were none that were young.
yeah, and I don't have any clue. Nobody really does for sure. But if we went back 1,000 years, I don't think there was any ideology in how you eat. It was you were given what you were given, or you hunted what you hunted, or you gathered what you gathered. And there was very little like, oh, this isn't ethical. You know,
No.
there was none of that. It's
Maybe
just
in
an interesting observation.
maybe you might find something in I don't know, some Eastern religion cultures or something like that. But generally speaking, you go back in time, men and women struggled to uh, to keep from starving. I mean, that's the
Yeah.
reality of it, right?
Oh,
And
yeah.
so you ate virtually anything that you could get your hands on, right? Because that's what you did. There was no waste. There was everything counted, and that's not the way it is in modern. Certainly not in Western culture, but in most industrialized countries, it's not like that anymore. So,
It's,
although I'm
yeah.
sure
I
it
think
is in some.
it's still around, I think, in places like when I lived in Honduras, like, I took a month off and just traveled by public bus to all these little villages all through Honduras and Guatemala, which was quite an experience. And some of the little villages, it was a tough life. You
Yeah,
could tell things were pretty tight. And we were talking with this one guy who was a street vendor because we go get our morning stuff. And I wasn't eating carnivore then, but I would get a couple bananas from him because the only fruits I really ever ate were bananas and pineapple. But I would get a couple bananas from him and then go get whatever else was for breakfast, which was usually some kind of eggs and bread and beans and rice. That was a pretty common
yeah,
thing. And it was usually something in these little villages where you would kind of find these little places and they weren't too used to tourists. There were some there. Well, the local guy who had the food cart, we got talking with him, about what it's like there just because we were curious. There was three of us traveling together. And he was talking about, he's like, well, I'm on my seventh child now and we're doing this. And I'm like, wow, 7 kids. He's like, yeah, but only 2 of them are alive
yeah,
because all the other ones have died. And I was like, oh, that's sorry to hear that. I go, how? And then he's just like, just, diseases from Central America, dysentery, giardia, things like that. And I was asking him how much it cost to get all these things taken care of. And I forgot what it was, but it was around like $120 basically to get a newborn to an infant state strong enough that they can live. That's all they need. And this guy made like, $60 a year kind of thing. Cause he's again, this really remote village. And it hit home pretty hard. And of course, like our 3 buddies, we basically came up with about 100 and I think $50 or something like that for him. And it freaked him out. We handed him this and we just said, hey, take this. And, we knew he wasn't scamming us because it's this little village and, everything else. But it was like, you could tell he didn't want to do it. He was like, no, I can't do that from you guys. That's just way too much. And we're like, trust us. This is like us going out for dinner. Each one of us kicking in whatever we kicked in, 50
yes,
bucks. And he was still just like, oh, I couldn't. And then he kept trying to give us like all his bananas and we're like, they'll go bad. Just enjoy it and sell it. And you could tell though, because he was in tears, we were in tears, because he's like, I can't believe this happened. And I think when you look at people who live like that, again, getting back to this, are we wrong? They're trying to eat what they can eat and they have a very limited amount. And you go to these remote villages and they're substance living 100%. So there's some pigs, some other animals, a few things that come in and get stuff, but everything else is grown. And it's a wide variety and not a lot of any one thing. It does kind of vary. It's not like you can just go, oh yeah, give me kiwis and they all look good.
Right.
They might have 3 bananas one day and a new stalk, but that as that stalk goes down, they might not have another one to replace it right away.
Yeah. Which again, it's why the whole notion of you need to eat this entire range of plants, 65 different varieties of things, and none of that, again, outside of modernized culture, none of that existed.
Yeah.
Even Chad, when we were growing up, which has been some time ago now, you got fruit in season in the store. You can go in the store now and buy almost anything year round without fail.
Yeah.
And depending on where you live, you certainly can. None of that existed. Not just a long time ago. None of that existed 40, 50 years ago. Ever. Right? You
Yeah.
got, it's still a story that I hear people talk about now, that how, at Christmas time, the kids would get an orange, right? Or they get an apple. And that was like a big
Yeah.
deal because they got fresh fruit, because you didn't get fresh fruit in the wintertime if you lived in the middle of the country, right? That wasn't a thing. And so, again, I think people forget that what you can walk into the store and buy today is not at all what you could walk
What it
into the
was.
store and buy even 30 or 40 years ago. But they don't realize that because, things change, and you don't really realize, I think, how quickly things change,
Well, you wouldn't
probably.
find star fruit and all these other weird exotic
Well,
fruits.
yes.
Like you can go into
Yes.
any Whole Foods or anything around here in Phoenix and get any kind of almost weird, you know, whatever
Yes.
you want. So does anybody have any questions in the comments? I'm curious. I'll say one thing, the stress thing I've been going through, and some of you might know this with my dad, things have kind of, it's still not looking good. He's still, he's in rehab, but he's had his first day of treatment. And I think things are kind of, we know where they're going. Unfortunately, they're not looking good, but I'm kind of on an even keel. So as I said, this stress, to me, one thing is that stress is a lot worse, I guess, or more of a thing than I thought, because I've always had a pretty high stress life doing things. So I've always been used to stress, because the more you put yourself under stress, the better you get at handling it, the better, you can take it. And they even do training like that in some of the places, where they just keep putting you in really stressful situations so you learn how to handle them. Well, as some of you know, like my average weight usually is 178, and it's been that way for the last 3+ years, up or down maybe a pound or two, but it's always at 178. And with this thing with my dad, the highest I hit, I call it 15 pounds, but it's actually more. I hit 197 about a week and a half ago, which is quite a bit more than, 178. So the stress thing, and it was weird because I guess it was around my belly kind of thing, but everything else, my wife didn't even really notice I'd gained that much weight, which is really 19 pounds, I guess, actually. And it was just interesting because that much hit me and gained that much without me changing one thing in my diet. Nothing had changed, nothing else. It was purely an emotional rug pull on my dad getting cancer, going to the hospital, and all this other stuff.
Yeah. So just
I haven't,
the change in your hormones because of the stress just caused your body to retain. Just said we're going to pack away as
yeah,
much fat as
I'm
we
sure
can because
cortisol,
things look bad, right?
yeah, something's happening with that. So for that, whatever it was, actually, maybe it's been like, because I talked about it last 2 weeks ago, so maybe it's been a little bit longer than I think. But I did it for about a week and a half, and nothing really moved the scale too much. Like I was down a few pounds. I was down to about that 190 range, but it was like going super, super slow. So one thing I finally did, and I was talking with Chuck about this off screen for you guys to know, I started doing fasting for 2 days, and this is my second day. I did have a little bit of Parmesan cheese with my bone broth just because it helps, again, my no gallbladder situation. And the bone broth I make has got a pretty good layer of fat on it because I like the fat on it. So I'm not concerned with like dry fasting or try to only water fast, but I think bone broth and a little bit of cheese with the broth isn't that much of a hit. And I know enough fasting people said, yeah, you take one little spike, but it's still, still a fast. And I'm going to try to, as I keep fasting, get that down just to some bone broth, maybe for a couple times, and then see if I can do without it. But I definitely noticed yesterday, the first full day, by evening, I was hungry. So that's
Yeah.
when I had it.
Yeah.
And
So you're doing 40, so basically 48 hours and then 5 days
48
of eating,
hours,
48 hours.
5 days of eating. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I
Do-
tend to eat about 11 or 12. So whatever that was, like, that Saturday, I ate about noon. So I haven't eaten since Saturday noon, and I won't eat till tomorrow. I'm going to go shopping and try to get some more lamb. But I'm going to try that. I don't know how long I'm going to do it, but I'm going to. This is also like I'm really good at giving people grace if they mess up, do things, like I said, just, learn from it, get back on it, do it. I have a hard time with the fast, but there's also the point in this carnivore diet that I found, and even in my keto diet that I found, sometimes you just got to toughen up and just go, I'm going to do this and make it happen. You can make all the excuses you want. So I'm just decided I'm going to make these fasts happen to see what happens. One, because I wasn't having much of a change at all, like I said, the weight drop was going slow. And I know this will be a shock to my system. And a lot of times those shocks to your system are what gets you going again, what gets you losing weight again, whether it's overeating for a week and then cutting back or something. So I'm hoping this will work. So it'll be interesting to do in any way. I'm just kind of curious to see if I can lose some of that. I'm going to kind of pinch my gut, see if I can lose a little extra autophagy over the next,
yeah.
I guess, 2 months. I'll probably do it for at least 8 weeks. So I'll probably do 2 months of that,
Yeah, that'd probably be pretty
which is
good.
part of our carnivore strong too.
I have not done I've not done too much for quite some time.
Denmark.
As I got to where I was really close to the weight I wanted, I've really not
Hmm.
done any fasting, so it's been a while for me. But I did do some 48. I've done some really extended fasts in the past, but not any recently. I think 12 days is the longest I've ever fasted.
And we just got blown out of the water. I did 37 days water only. And like, that's
Yes,
awesome.
no, I've never. 12 days is the longest I've ever done. And I
Yeah.
haven't done that anytime recently. The 3 days, I used to do 3 days fairly often, but now, again, I think there's some real benefits to fasting. I think that probably it's a good thing to
I,
do from time to time, or, even extended 48, 72-hour fast. I think that's
yeah.
really good.
I would love to know what the
I just haven't
37
done
days
any.
was for. If you could type that in, like, were you trying to lose a certain amount? What did you lose? What did you notice? How was it? I'd love to hear more on that. Oh, here it was in the next comment. Never mind. Remember her, Rosanna? Never mind.
Oh, so
Lost
look at
19
that. The
kilograms and the pouch around belly was awesome.
so how if
I
you
just
don't
gotta
mind
scroll
us
down this.
if you don't mind me asking, how old are you? And did you have a fair amount of loose skin and you've seen some real improvement from autophagy?
Yeah, I think people are pretty impressed with that. I am. That's a really good cravings at the end of 37 days. I could not imagine my cravings.
So,
I'm already like 2 days.
This
I
is
know
the
severe, I could have probably done it easier, but now it's harder, I think.
so one of the things on my longer
Yeah.
fasts, the hunger is gone after 3 days, and
Yeah.
rarely do you get hungry, but you certainly do have cravings. It's like, you want to eat. And when I was doing that fast, I wasn't doing keto, I wasn't doing carnivore. So, like, I wanted to eat pizza, you know, after
Yeah.
after a few days, not necessarily hungry, but you know, you do have cravings.
Well, I
That's a
don't
long time to
feel as
go.
bad today. I don't feel that hungry today, So I know it's just that first day. You just got to get through that first day, sleep, and by next morning, you're
Yes.
kind of all right.
Well, and
I am actually making another batch of bone broth right now, too.
you've been doing one meal a day some anyway,
Pretty
right?
much the
Or
whole time. Yeah.
yeah,
Sometimes
so
I'll eat 2 meals a day if I'm hungry, but I'm pretty much always OMAD.
yeah, I'm doing 2 meals a lot now. Well, still probably only half the time, maybe, but yeah, I think if you do one meal a day and you eat your last meal in the evening and then you just go 2 days, then normally the next day you're not really hungry till the evening anyway, which is when you would normally have eaten. But some of that even, Chad, is psychological. It's like it's just a notion that you're not
It
eating.
is.
It's like,
Well,
oh
I think your
no, I'm
body
not gonna
too is
eat.
kind of going, okay, I'm used to feeding, so where is my food? You know, and you're going to get that response. I do think I don't really know how that works with ghrelin. I know obviously the whole response of ghrelin, but I do think maybe that there's something with your body used to that and it's kind of going, hey, feed me. You should be feeding me now. Dave
Yeah.
was going to be here. He had something going on with his child for school that he had to go do. So he will be back. But we're going to do another one next week, and then we'll be doing another one 2 weeks as we normally do. So he'll be on for next week,
Oh,
for that. And we're gonna do it on kind of experimenting and testing what we experiment with as far as foods and test and the reasons why we do that.
come come and tell us what you've experimented with. But food is what
Yeah.
we're talking about. Just
Yeah.
to clarify, not LSD
I think
necessarily.
I've
But if you
come
want
to
to
the end
share
of my
that in the
3 minutes.
comments, then feel free.
There you go. Some quick dry. Just have the powder. Just sift out the powder and make a smoothie and down it. You'll be okay.
The other thing that I've heard quite a bit, Chad, was the notion of no studies. And this is again
Mm,
something that people probably don't understand. Generally, not always, but generally, studies are done for a reason, and they're not just to discover truth. Studies are done,
yeah.
most of them, because they're somebody's footing the bill for that. Right? Studies aren't done
Yeah.
for free, and there's no just uh, so, some beneficiary out there who's just totally benevolent saying, "Well, just go find out about this. We just want to know the truth." No, there's no studies, or very few. There are some studies underway, from what I understand, but predominantly all of those studies are paid for by someone who actually wants to validate a position or sell something.
Yeah.
So a lot of the vegan
And there's
studies are paid for by the Seventh Day Adventist. Uh,
and they
that's
usually
just
have an all vegan, you
yes,
know, group
yeah,
running
yes,
them, doing them. It's like Ansel Keys.
exactly.
The the 7 country thing was what was it actually,
Hmm.
31? I think it was 31. But he cherry picked what he wanted, or was it 24 or
Yes,
21?
it was.
Anyway, it was quite a few left.
Yes, only the
It was like
countries that
two or three
actually validated his position were included in the final
he
results of the
chose,
study.
yeah. And there's
And,
so much of that today.
well, absolutely. And all of
And
those
what was the
studies
school?
were bad.
What was the school that just recently? Do you guys know in the comments too? What was it? Wasn't Harvard? It was one of the Cambridge or someone like that who just had like a whole bunch of studies that proved out to be false, that they were just falsifying all these studies to get studies out. Because the more studies that people put out, the better it is for the school or something. I don't know if you remember seeing that. It was on a
I did
couple of
not
the,
see it.
I forgot who, like, it was one of those quick, like 3 minute Dr. Baker ones and something else. And it could have been like Bart K. Oh, Bart K had a good one the other day that this other vegan person had how he debunks things.
Yes, yes.
And there was a vegan study, and she's like, oh, this shows that, these basically ancestral people, whatever, were actually vegans. And of course, he's stopping it in his way, like, right, you didn't even read that, did you? And of course, how he plays, he's got a good character.
Yes.
And of course, she didn't read it. And all it was is like one little weird tribe in Peru that was like 73 bones that they found that were isolated on some hillside at like some weird position that did eat that. But it's so funny that they'll pick that, and these huge headlines were, something
Yes.
like ancient people were vegetarian. So it's like, oh, so some people that probably hiked up there and got stuck and died, for all we know.
Yeah, 12
And
of
now
them.
you're going to change everything. Yeah.
That's the
Stanford, maybe it was Stanford. I
that
remember
is
it was something like that.
that goes on all the time. Even the
Yeah.
issue with the Inuit people who virtually ate no plants ever,
Yeah.
right? And they also, until they were introduced to Western diet, a lot of the issues that we have in Western culture didn't exist for them.
Yeah.
And
Well, and
it
they
wasn't
smoke like
because
mad. Some of them smoke like mad, I've heard.
it wasn't because they were just genetically impervious to those things. Because now, all the same kind of issues we
Hmm.
have in Western culture, health wise, they have. Right?
Yeah.
And it's not because their genes have changed in the last 100 years. It's because their diets changed radically in the last 100 years.
Well,
And
even the
then,
Maasai,
yes, the people group. I was just going to ask you about that in
I was going
Africa.
to say the Maasai had a bunch of stuff happen where tourists bring him Snickers and all this other stuff. And, their other sister, whatever tribe, if you will, too, is a little more, I guess, I'm going to say this, it's not correct, but in town, they get more seed oils now, and they get all this other processed food that they get to eat. And they're showed how to make, these breads and fried things. And it's just like there was a really good show on, and I should try to find it and remember it, on the original Australian Aboriginal people and these people trying to get them back to their ways. And it was probably like 3, 4 years ago I saw it, and I don't know how old it was, but it was basically these researchers went in because they're so obese, because all they're getting is all this refined garbage and seed oil garbage to try to make bread. And like, oh, well, don't kill the kangaroo, don't kill your, lizard, whatever these big lizard things they used to feed on and stuff. So this group went in and said, no, let's go, we can dig up the roots you used to use. We can kill the animals you used to kill, and do this stuff. And it was kind of an interesting change. But that is the problem, is typical, here, eat this. Because I'm sure somewhere the company's making money selling that, and the GMO that's supposed to be doing good for whatever reason is getting big bucks to bring in the seed oils. And, it's just such a scam.
Yeah. And we've been told forever that that's, you know, well, not forever, because that's not right. But there are so many people alive today in this country that when things were different, they weren't alive. Literally, they weren't alive, right? So
Yeah.
things have changed radically technologically, but also diet. Diet has changed radically. Even you talked about the
Yeah.
70s earlier, Dave. The other thing was that happened there, and Dr. Jason Fung has talked about this a number of times. It wasn't that junk food was not available, because it was. So you could eat, you know, all TV dinners in the aluminum foil bottoms with the rip-off tops. You could go to
I
McDonald's,
remember
White
those.
Castles, all that. All those places existed. What didn't exist was yet the mentality that you ate 6 or 7 times a day with snacks, that it was okay to eat every night. You had ice cream and ho-hos and Twinkies before you went to bed. None of that existed. In the 70s, there was still a notion that you ate supper at a table, and that was it. You might have a
Yeah.
dessert. You weren't eating stuff all night long. You weren't sitting on the couch eating chips and salsa. You were going to bed, and by default, you fasted 12 hours because you ate at 6 or 7 at night and you ate at 6 or 7 in the morning. You didn't get, snacks at 10, snacks at 2. Kids didn't get that kind of stuff. You didn't eat candy all day long. And all of that began to change, but there was still plenty of junk food. It was just that
Well,
one thing, we didn't stuff our face endlessly all day long with it. And it was still a fair amount of moderation where you no kid could just eat chicken nuggets every night and cheesecake because
yeah.
parents didn't allow it. You
Well,
couldn't
how is
just
it for
eat
you?
and have, whatever.
How is it for you with coming? And I'm curious for people out there too, if you want to type in the comments. We had a dinner. We breakfast was kind of our own, and we did have cereal. And again, I was born in '63, so you know, but breakfast was kind of our own. But my mom would always make a lunch. She thought it was balanced. Of course, she was doing what they told. We would have a sandwich. Unfortunately on white bread or something, but a sandwich and a juice to be healthy, or milk. And it might have had like a little bag of cut up carrots or something else we'd have to eat. And then maybe like a little bag of chips or a couple cookies or something. I remember that it was always made. But we always had a dinner as our family. We always would have a sit down dinner.
Cooked.
And all our friends that I knew all would,
Yes.
because they used to ring a dinner bell and we'd all be playing in the neighborhood and everybody would go back to their house and
And,
eat their
and,
dinner. And if theirs wasn't good, it'd be like, I'm going to eat over at, so and so's house. Okay.
and it
Kind
was
of thing.
cooked food,
Yeah, it
not
was
from a
cooked.
box. Yes.
No,
Yeah,
ours were
exactly.
always something good, whether she made lasagna from scratch or did, a roast, in a slow cooker, and we'd have like a stew kind of roast, or, all this other
Right.
stuff.
Yeah,
But
and
I'm
that's the way
curious
it
if
was
you
for
guys
me.
out there the same way, if some of you out there when you were growing up, if your families had normal, because that we're kind of guilty of that. We don't really have normalish dinner times here. And, we kind of do, kind of don't. They kind of come and go.
Yeah,
But
we
we did
we
for a while. It was easier when they were littler. Now that my daughter's in college, it's way
harder.
hard.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
still, me and my wife still do usually one meal a day at the table. But my kids, our youngest two daughters, I know for sure, they're really good about that still. With their kids, they do have a meal that they've cooked. Not, and again, not every day. And there was times when we didn't do it when I was younger, but we did it when they were home. We still do it most of the time now. Me and my wife will eat at the same time at the table, and we have no one here but us. And they do it with their kids. By the way, cheesecake, William. Yes, I love cheesecake, New York style. I really like it with blueberry topping, but I have not had that for many, many years. I have had just New York style cheesecake a couple of times in the past, couple of years, but
The
it's a
only
pretty
thing I would
rare
ever do
thing
sometimes
for
is
me.
like in a dish, if you take some cream cheese and some cream and some egg yolks and mix it up, and then add collagen. And collagen is the key, that you add collagen to it, mix it up, stick it in the freezer, pull it out in like half an hour, mix it again, put it back in the freezer, pull it out half an hour, mix it up again. When I would have this carnivore ice cream treat, I'd do it sometimes with cream cheese. And it's like almost like a frozen, and the collagen gets it really gummy. So it's not like an ice cream that's like, you know what I mean? Crystally or anything. It has this very tenacious, gummy kind of thing that's actually really awesome. So you could have something like that instead of
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it's easy to make. You just go chunk, 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 stir it up, put it in the freezer. I don't like prepping food. I have
Now,
no desire to prep food anymore.
Sandra, I am not a moderator either, and so the way that I survive is basically now we can have some stuff in the house, and we do, but I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
But if my wife makes a pie, which she doesn't do anymore, but yeah, I have issues. If my daughter makes homemade cinnamon rolls and brings them to the house, if she brings one, right, then if she brought six, I just eat them all. It's just bad, right? So my
I feel
my
like on this, we all
my
need to
deal
go to a
is
mirror and say cheesecake 3 times.
my deal is holidays. That's what I do. So on a holiday, if I want a piece of cheesecake, I do it. But then that's it. So I can't moderate. I can't. I don't bring it home. I don't have it around. People give us pies at holidays. It's like, dear, take a piece if you want and get rid of the rest of it. Like I don't want it in the refrigerator. I don't want to see it. Um,
And that's why on the rare times that I would make like a carnivore ice cream treat and stuff like that, I just make it in a little single serving bit. Because if
and
I
that's
would
it.
make a whole thing, it would be gone
Yeah.
in a thing. I think nowadays I could control it more. And the other thing that I would do, and I've mentioned this before, when I first started keto, I learned a lot in that first year of what tricks to do. And one of the tricks to do is if you make something like this, get those little silicone molds and pour some of the ice cream mixture when it's still liquid into these ice cream molds, pop it in the freezer, then pop all those out and put it in a bag. I did find that I could say only have two, and they're only like a teaspoon each. They're really small, but it gives you enough flavor, enough taste to kind of satisfy
Yes.
that early, I got to have this feeling. And I did that a lot in that first year because it was just handy to have them there. And if I was like really jonesing for something, I could just have one, wait, see if I wanted another one. And I would do that without eating the whole bag. But if it was like candy when I was fat, like I used Swedish fish because they were my death defying culprit kryptonite. It'd be like, oh, just two, just three. Okay, well, I'm just going to have one more.
Just eat
Well,
the
just
bag.
three, just two. Well, I'm just going to have a couple. Oh, just a couple, and you keep going back for like, oh, it's just one or two. But when you do that every 2 minutes, pretty soon the bag's empty. And that
Yeah.
was my stupidity thing, you
Yeah.
know.
Well, we all have. I shouldn't say all of us, but most of us have some kind of issues we deal with like that, and we all find kind of ways. I like to
Yeah.
eat peanuts, and recently my wife found just at the Mennonite stores near
I'm
us.
gonna I'm gonna send you peanuts, but they're gonna be bad, so you get a horrible gut ache, and then
Yeah,
you'll not want to
thanks.
eat them again.
They were just a whole bag full of the size of packet that you'd buy at the convenience store for two for a dollar or
Yeah,
whatever. So usually I'll have a jar of peanuts. Then I'll take the lid. I'll put few peanuts in my hand. I'll eat them. I'm good to go. But when she buys that bag, that's like probably four or five of the little handfuls. But you know what? I rarely can eat the bag and then take out a little, and it's just different. It's like I want to eat the whole bag.
yeah.
And so I mean, we all have to find ways to get around that and to deal
So
with that.
Sandra, my kids are 15, 19. My daughter is 19. She likes baking stuff, bringing things to college and things like that. I can say though, I understand that, the portion thing and stuff you're going through. So I know early on, like I said, the keto allowed me to have all these keto snacks, and we could have the Lily's chocolate chips instead of regular chocolate chips, but we have stuff around the house all the time. It's not tough for me anymore, but I know if I was starting carnivore cold turkey and there was that stuff, it would be hard.
It's not hard for me to abstain now. I don't really crave that
Yeah.
stuff. So, we go almost every Sunday. They have a meal after church. There's always stuff there. I mean, not donuts, but fudge brownies, cookie. It's not hard for me to not eat that stuff anymore. And it's okay for me to be around it. The biggest challenge is I know that if I eat one, I'm much more likely to eat four or five. So I can
Yeah.
say no. My wife can have one because she's really good at moderation, and she's just perfectly fine. It's like not me. I just have to not do it. And if I am going to do something, it's like I have to do what you're talking about, Chad. Make sure it's, if I'm going to eat a piece of cheesecake or cinnamon roll my daughter's made, it's like don't bring a whole tub full, right? You bring me one cinnamon
Yeah.
roll you made, fine. Okay, I'm okay with that because I eat it and it's gone. And I'll feel terrible for, in 35 minutes. And the next day I'll still feel a little off, but I have my cinnamon roll. I can't eat six of them. And so, yeah, I'm just
Hmm.
not good at moderation at all. So, yeah, peanuts are not really a nut, and they probably are full of mold.
A
And
legume.
it's one of the few bad
Yeah.
things. Peanuts and natural peanut butter. It's one of the things that I still eat that are it's probably not very good for me in reality. So blueberries are not great, but I have those on occasion. But
Blueberries
those are
are not too bad though. I think
now,
blueberries and raspberries, because at least they're lower in sugar.
yeah, as long
I
as you're
forgot
not
what a
eating
serving,
a pound of them.
it's, yeah, but like a normal serving, whatever that would be, like, I
Yeah,
forgot what they equated to, a quarter cup or something. It's like
little
8 or
handful,
7 grams of sugar.
little
Or
handful.
like yeah, but like some of the other fruits, are like 30, 40 grams of
Yeah, yeah.
sugar for the same.
They're like little bags of sugar.
Berries, yeah, berries aren't too bad, at least if
Yeah.
people are going to have that for
And some
sweet
nuts are not
thing.
bad. If you don't have issues with them. But again, peanuts are legume, not really a nut.
Yeah,
Blueberries and peanuts the thing that I
mac nuts,
are the thing.
macadamia nuts were my Achilles
Yeah,
heel of the
never cared
nuts.
for
That
those
and
very much.
pistachios. Yeah, those two would be the ones like when I was doing keto that would always be in the house.
Yeah. Oh, actually, macadamia nuts are I like those. Pistachios are the one that I don't.
Yeah.
I don't like.
Okay.
So
I like pistachios,
they
but
look too
yeah,
much like peas.
they're
They're
kind of
green.
weird when
They're
I would
green.
always get the ones in the shell so it would slow me down a little bit.
Yes, yes, yes.
But the mac nuts never come in the shell. They're pretty hard shells and what you have to do to them, you know.
So, one last thing here on being wrong, Chad. I have come to a place to where, and I have just shared this with people. Even if how I eat is going to kill me in 5 years, if my option was to do what I was doing for decades, weigh 275 pounds, be on 6 prescription medications, and not be able to do anything, and live for 40 years on, five, six, seven medications nonstop, and be in the little scooter chair because I couldn't walk through the grocery store, or have 5 or 6 years in my
Yeah.
current health, I'd take that trade every day of the week. There's no
Yeah.
way I would go back. Even if somebody said, hey, eat meat every day, you know what, 5 years you're going to be dead. Okay, that's fine with me. As long as I can still weigh, 120 pounds less than I used to, do anything I want to do, don't take any pills, don't take any prescription meds, don't have any health issues, and I'm just going to drop dead in 5 years, that's well worth it. Now, I don't believe that's
Yeah.
what's going to happen, but, there,
I
there
think
is a mentality that just again, I get that comment still a lot. It's like, oh man, I can't. You're gonna kill yourself. Well, doing what I was doing before, I absolutely was killing myself. Right, without a doubt, driving myself straight to the graveyard.
I think also we get so much pushback, and again, if anybody wants to say what they get, it's between the 4 and 6 o'clock service at church, we have a dinner, and I never obviously eat the dinner. And some people know what I do there, but it's like a lot of people are like, "Oh, you're not going to eat," and it's like, no, I don't really eat this. I just, and then I get a chance to tell them, and some of them are kind of curious, and some of them you can tell just are like confused, like, well, you eat some that everybody goes through this. Well, you eat
Yes,
some
yes.
vegetables, right? No, and so it's preaching to the choir here, but it is interesting how even as we go through this for whatever long, it never stops. I guess maybe I'm sharing that.
No,
All these people that would know should know, but they still. wonder. And you always get a few that'll be like, oh, well, that's not healthy. How can you do that? And I'm always like, well, just look at the condition I'm in for a dude who's, 60.
Yeah.
It's like I've got a totally flat gut. I feel great. I don't have any more, and you just go down the list of things, and they always have this, but, but, well, and it just, I don't know. It's just so funny because I hope it changes. I think it's starting to change because this is a fad. We all know this is just an internet fad.
Yeah,
But I do
exactly.
hope it changes. I hope this internet fad changes enough where enough people read and see that it's real. And again, this will go into our next week's thing. Experiment, try it. I always tell
Yeah.
people just try it.
Yeah. Well,
Then you'll know.
I think too, you still, I think more and more people, again, I know our youngest daughters, both of them, much more conscientious about what they eat. They don't do carnivore, but they do extremely limited amounts of processed food. I mean, our youngest daughter, I was just talking about bringing homemade cinnamon rolls, and she makes sourdough bread. But so clearly, they're still eating stuff I don't not on my menu, but they have really cut back on seed oils. Uh, their baby, who's well, I don't want to talk too much about their too much personal information here about ages and specifics, but they don't just eat endlessly feed them little them little you know sugar puff
Baby
things,
treats.
right? They started
Yeah.
eating like non-meat off a rib bone and stuff like that, just as soon as she could put it in her mouth. So I'm hoping that more and more people, when they're still young and healthy, actually do this, and they don't have to try to repair decades of damage they've done to their body, because that's still an issue today, Chad. And I don't know if you hear this or not. People that know me will say, "Oh yeah, you look great." People who don't know me at all, it's like, "Oh yeah, well you look terrible, and you've got loose skin, and yeah, yeah, okay." I'll be 60 in July. I weighed 275 pounds and ate crap for 45 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, no wonder I look like this. Plus other things that I did when I was in my youth that were not exactly health oriented. Okay. So could I have looked better if I started when I was 20? Absolutely. But all things considered, at my age, when I walk through the grocery store and I look at people that are 60 years old, I'm in better health than the overwhelming vast majority.
Yeah.
So
Well, I'll be staying. I know, like, I've had a lapse of new videos up except for some lives just because my whole dad thing, because that kind of rug pulled me pretty hard, but I'm still here. Yep. The adrenaline injection, I've had those from anaphylactic shock from my allergies before. I don't like adrenaline injections. They just feel weird. I think the problem with too is I was in anaphylactic shock and not breathing, and you know, it's like you're stuck in this perpetual, you know, for martial arts stuff, if you've ever been choked out, that feeling of just before you black out, it's like anaphylactic shock is like that weird pressure headed feeling of blacking out, but it's just there the whole time you're in it. It's a really horrible feeling. It's a really horrible
hey,
feeling.
put Sandra's next comment up there. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I did.
By the way, Sandra, just so you know, um, I have been extremely delinquent in new videos, and I have been on a few live streams that I've been trying to get on. But yes, for me, the last few months have been insane. And the other thing, which I'll just give personal information, Chad, and you can follow up if you have anything else. But the other thing that happens to me often, this happened in the beginning as well. I thought, I just want to share my story. No one may ever watch. And the response to that was pretty overwhelming. Lots of positive and feedback and those types of things, and people ask questions. But I am still somewhat amazed that anybody actually wants to watch my videos. I watched a guy the other night who has 3.5 million subscribers, And he said when he first started, he couldn't understand why no one watched his videos. And now that he's been doing this long enough and he has this huge channel, he says, now I don't know why anybody does. Right? Like, why does anybody come here and watch this middle aged guy do videos, when I get a million views? Uh, and I'm like that still. I mean, I don't get a million views, though. That's the difference. My videos are nothing like that. But, sometimes you just feel you're thinking, yeah, I mean, what am I going to say? So, but it's important. I try to remind myself it doesn't really matter. There's two or three people, maybe four or five, and there are people that will come and watch and they're encouraged. And in the end, that's why I started doing videos anyway, because I thought, man, I wish somebody would have told me this 10 years ago, right? And not just
Yeah.
yesterday. And so that's why I started making videos, and I am going to keep making them. I'm making them at a much lower rate than before. But part of that also is that I just didn't want to make content. I know that's the way to keep the channel alive, is just to say, okay, I got to do a video every week. I don't know. For me, it just felt like, yeah, is this really something good to do, right? Do I need to make a video of about this just to make a video? And so I've just been hesitant to do that sometimes. And so anyway, that's kind of the story. I am going to be doing videos. I am doing some lives, and here with Chad and Dave, and then also on my own. And I will
Or
continue
do
to do
me is
that
you
and
mean
do
like
some
an
videos
interview?
as well.
Is that what Sandra's talking about? Is an
Yes.
interview?
Hey, if you want to interview
Yeah.
Sandra, you
Yeah.
send me or
Email.
Chad an email. We'll see who can get you on first.
I might win that if I wanted to.
Yeah, you
I've
you
got a couple. I know I've got a couple
probably
things
could.
I've got to do, but yeah, if you ever want to, if anybody ever does, I know you got to hit that little verify thing on the deal. I think I can type it in here. What? My keyboard isn't working.
Yeah. Plus, Sandra's probably watching on your channel, I think, not mine. So
Yeah, CD Carnivore. I need new glasses because my other ones are all messed up. I'm gonna click my email in there.
there you go. Y'all just put it out there for everyone to see.
Yeah, that's fine. It's a Gmail one. There's not enough. I don't think it'll Gmail filters.
I already get so
It'll be
much
like,
spam. It doesn't matter. There you go.
yeah.
There's mine.
But no, even anybody else out there, if you want to share things, I think it's good that it's like Dave's doing a really good job with all of those, because
Yeah.
then when everybody shares, I do
He's
have
a
one guy coming up that I'm going to be doing, an 84-year-old rancher
Oh, is it the
who's
lady in
carnivore.
Canada?
No, this is a
Oh,
totally
okay.
different person.
Okay.
They've got a smaller herd, like 50 head, but pretty cool at 84, carnivore and still ranching.
Oh, Sandra says she's too shy. No, you're not. It doesn't have to be live. That's the other thing too. You can do an interview that's not live, and so then you can ask. You can just. I mean, you do the interview while you're alive, but it doesn't have to be broadcast
Yeah.
live. We we don't want to.
Yeah.
It's
I
too
wouldn't do a
late
live
if
one.
you're dead to do the
I'd
interview.
do a recorded with everybody, and then that way it's
Yes,
easier.
I have done some lives with people, but also recorded. It's easier. It's easier to do
Yeah.
live because there's no editing, but I've done them, both ways. But if you do one that's not live, it's totally safe. It doesn't matter if you're shy or not. People, if they're a good interview, they'll just draw the questions out, and they'll ask and prompt you along, and it's all good. And then if it's terrible, you just cut parts out, so it doesn't make any difference.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so also I'm displaced from my normal studio, which is just in my house. I don't own a studio. It was in the guest room. I am now not in the guest room, and I will not be again for a while. So I have a new laptop coming to help me out with that soon. Yeah, you
Yeah.
might be a
Or do both. Just
YouTuber
do
star.
both of us, then it's done. Then see, like my little studio thing, I'll have to do a backside view of it sometime. It's like it's in the second living room, but it was my photo studio where I would shoot stuff at home. So it's already a second living room, a home studio, cement floor kind of place. And in the one side, I've sequestered it off to so it's set up at least and easy to get into. You might be the new, yep. Well, the whole YouTube thing is interesting. Just that it's a lot of fun though. I just like sharing the thing because, I taught scuba for 15 years and I taught snowboarding for 8 years. I loved teaching people things I was passionate about. So I think I still have that passion. And in the comments, it's like I do still answer every comment. I'm sure maybe there'll be a point when I can't, but I love answering and complete answers that try to do things because my life has been so radically changed. It just so radically changed that I can't not help people or
Yes.
answer something. And this is always from our perspective. Everything that I say is just from my perspective of doing this for how long I've been doing it. And if there's somebody else that has a little different perspective, it's not that one of us are right or one of us are wrong. It's just that perspective. I do still think carnivore, though, is carnivore. It's animal product. If you're going to do other stuff like Dave does, it's more keto, but it doesn't matter. It's still the same base. It's still using animal protein as a base, and it's having some other stuff. And I think you guys have heard me say that, and it's in the comments. Clean keto is perfectly fine. I think it's easier for most people, and there is no magic bullet that works for everybody, but there's commonalities of what you get.
Yes.
And you also have to be happy and go through life and not be like, oh, I'm so burnt out. And I think some of you guys know this, and I say you guys, I should say you people more than guys in here, but anyway, my bad slang. I'm eating a lot of lamb these days, less beef, but I eat chuck roast. I was going to say I eat chuck, but that might not sound right. I eat chuck roast and lamb and ribeye when I can afford them. And maybe once in a while when my boy makes taco meat, I'll have a small bowl of that with seasoning. But otherwise, I literally am down to like 3 cuts of meat, and I'm perfectly, four
Yeah.
plus years, I'm perfectly satisfied with that. And I can have the same thing every day. I'm like a 15-year-old in pizza. They just don't get tired of it. And I don't get tired of my little lamb chops.
That is one thing though, Dave, that probably makes it easier for people to transition initially if they would do pretty strict keto, stay under 50 carbs a day or wherever. Is and I noticed this when I first started, and I do have people ask me about this also. Because I'm like you now, the variety is pretty minimal, right? We eat eggs,
Hmm.
bacon, chuck roast, ribeye. We're like you, ribeye when we can afford it. We actually do have some lamb chops tonight that we're gonna have. Parmesan cheese, cheddar cheese,
Yeah.
heavy whipping cream, although not in my coffee much anymore. But that's it. Like, I mean, I have other stuff that you don't have. Squares of dark chocolate sometimes, some peanuts,
Hmm.
maybe some blueberries. But generally, the variety in my diet is like shrunk down to, it's like this big. But I don't even care
Yeah.
anymore. Like it's not a thing. We will still sometimes have something kind of outside the norm. But in the beginning, when you're used to just eating something different 6 days a week, it seems like this
Yeah.
huge restriction that like, oh, I can only eat this. Like you just
Seen
I
that?
don't want to eat that. And so the transition a bit in the beginning, we used to look up recipes. It's like, okay, a Tex-Mex thing. I mean, no bread or anything, but seasoning with the meat, cheese. We'd have stuffed mushroom caps. We'd have just try to how can you make this different, right? Like how can we make ground beef different than we did made it yesterday? We don't do that anymore, hardly ever,
I
right?
don't really, like I said, the dairy I do for the Parmesan cheese for my no gallbladder is just for that, but I don't really do well with pasteurized cheese. Like the other day, my boy did make some taco meat, and I'm like, oh, I'll have some of his taco meat. And sometimes it's okay, and I'll have a little bit just for fun. But I put some sour cream and some cheddar cheese in it, and it gave me the most gnarly gut ache.
Oh, really?
It just, I just was like, oh, like this horrible cramping gut ache thing. And it was a small bowl. I mean, we're talking like, a little teeny bowl that you can hold in the palm of your hand. It's like you'd have ice cream in, you
Yeah.
know,
Well,
well, some
not
of us might
me.
have it in like big
I have
cereal
the
bowl
ice cream
size,
in
but
the big bowl
yeah,
because it's keto ice
but
cream.
this
But
is like a small, probably like,
I know what you mean.
you know,
That's what my wife has her ice cream in. The
yeah,
little.
probably like a 12-ounce bowl, but because of the size of it, it's 12 ounces, but you couldn't fill it that much. It's just
Right.
like this little Corning ice cream bowl or something. But yeah, so even for me, like I just can't do it much. And I'll have it once in a while because I do like the little ice cream treat things once in a while. But I'm
Now,
kind of finding also if I have them for a few days, I just don't like them. But if I do a test, like I told you how I was testing the cream here recently just
mhm.
to see and then and it's like, yeah, I don't even really care for some stuff after a while that's outside that realm. I did have pork rinds in the cart the other day, and I just thought I was going to buy these and run a test, but I just don't even feel like testing them anymore because I know what I'm going to feel. So I even put them back. It's funny
I
because I
can
haven't had
see
those
some
in
from
like
here.
over a year.
I
Yeah.
haven't eaten it. My wife will eat them once in a while for snacks. I haven't. I used to eat a lot of pork rinds, but I've got to where I don't. I do on occasion, but it's pretty rare. So, but your taste does change and variety doesn't matter as much. Food
Yeah.
just doesn't matter as much to me as what it once did when I was consumed with what am I going to eat at noon? What am I going to eat? I was always starving, always hungry. It's just not a thing anymore. And so, now I eat because, I mean, there are certain things I really like and I like to eat them, like, ribeye or different steaks. I, I, I do enjoy eating those things, right? I still use sour cream, by the way, on my eggs sometimes,
Yeah.
or in our Tex-Mex stuff if we happen to have it. But it's not an obsession, and I've just got to where I don't need a bunch of variety all the time to make me happy. I don't ever feel like I'm missing out because we're just
No.
eating what we eat. So anyway, okay, we're rolling up on an hour and 15,
Yep.
Chad.
So we're going to jump off. Anyway, it's fun, everybody.
He
Hope
adopted
everybody had a
him
good
old.
time. All the hippo talk in the chat, you know. Alrighty.
All right,
Well,
well,
thanks
thanks
everybody.
everyone. Thank you, Chad. I appreciate it. And
Take
next
care.
Monday,
Yep.
Dave will be back with
Ahui
us.
ho.
We'll only be a week out.
Yeah, special 1 week in between, and then we're still going to pick up the second week. So
Yes, and I'll
we
be
already
on my new
confirmed that.
laptop. It won't change the way I
So
look or sound,
bring your
but
testing,
I will have it.
experimenting thoughts in what you
Yes,
do.
thank you, Sandra. Yeah, and I will as well because I have been doing some experimenting.
Yep.
All right,
Alrighty.
thanks,
Take
guys.
take care.
All right, bye.